That's good, because my first house in St. Paul,
Oh,
but you know, I had an alley.
Yeah, an
My
alley.
parents were on 37,
What chapter, the land is chapter?
raised 7 kids. Are we good? All good? Good evening, it's 6 o'clock, we'll call the meeting to order. Stephen, are you taking a roll tonight? Abby? Whoever takes it.
Commissioner Apolakowski,
here.
Commissioner Hoyman, Commissioner Steller,
Here.
Commissioner Wagner,
Here.
Commissioner Young,
Here.
Commissioner Stender, Chair Gerard.
Here. Ask if you're able, please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. Chair is looking for a motion to approve the agenda as presented or with changes.
So moved.
I have a motion, I have a second.
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second. It's a non-debatable motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. We have come to the part of the meeting which is an open forum. We invite anyone who wishes to speak on any issue to please step up, state your name and address for the record, spend a couple of minutes giving your thought. I will tell you, if you're here for the Amberley Woods project, there will be a public hearing specifically for that project a little later in the meeting. So I would appreciate if you'd hold your comments for that development until that public hearing. But if you'd like to discuss any other issue, we're more than happy to hear from you. So with that, does anyone wish to speak this evening? Thank you. We'll move on to item 6, the consent agenda. There are no items. Correct?
Correct.
We just moved to item 7. I'm a little confused there, what I have to do when there's no items in the consent agenda. Pardon me?
Oh, I said we are too. Yeah, we got you. There's
No.
nothing.
There are no consent items this evening.
So we just skip 6?
Just skip 6.
Perfect.
Moving right along.
We have our first regular agenda item is a public hearing for Amberley Woods, 21.03.21.23.0002, TCLD Land Holdings LLC. We will discuss both a preliminary plat and a PUD preliminary plan. The way this will work this evening is that the city staff will present the application as they understand it. When they finish, the commissioners will ask any clarification questions that needed. We will then ask if the applicant would like to add any comments, and we may possibly have questions for the applicant. After we've done that, then we will have the public hearing. I'll give further instructions at that time. At the end of the public hearing, it'll come back here for a decision by the Planning Commission. So with that, I believe, Nathan, you are presenting?
Yep. Good evening, Chair Gerard and members of the commission. So before I get started on the presentation here, I'll just kind of reintroduce myself. I'm Nathan First, a planner with Bold Mink. I work with Stephen and Abby periodically on development review. So now you know who I am, or maybe you remember now who I am. So anyways, I'll jump right into the Amberley Woods project review. So again, as the chair mentioned, this is a preliminary plat and PUD request. The developer is Twin Cities Land Development. TCLD Land Holdings is the applicant here. So the parcel is on the screen circled in yellow. You'll probably recognize this property from various concepts the commission's reviewed in the past. What's proposed here with the preliminary plat and PUD are 56 single-family homes. The property is of just under 39 acres in area, and the net density of this proposed project is 3.3 units per acre. And so we'll talk about how some of that breaks down. So on the screen, you can see, cutting right to the chase, here is the plan that was proposed for this project. Generally speaking, you'll see street connections made from, or connecting Granada Avenue. And in addition, those connections are also made to a connection on Goodview Avenue. So those are the streets with the 56 residential units on the west side of the property. On the east side of the property, there are quite a bit of wetlands, and so we'll talk about what is proposed with that area, the open space area. So we typically want to start with the land use analysis, so looking at the city's comprehensive plan and zoning standards for this particular land use. The site is zoned MXR1. That's consistent with the comprehensive plans guidance for the property, low to medium residential. The lowest development density that can occur in this area is 3 units per acre. So we have a 39-acre site, and on that site we have over 15 acres of wetlands. When I was looking at the plans, I counted at least 10 wetlands that are on this property that will be preserved through the land dedication proposed on this project, and there are a couple of wetlands on the Goodview Avenue corridor as well. So a fair number of wetlands and the associated buffers that protect them. And there is an upland area on the east side of the property. We'll talk about that. That's proposed as part of the open space dedication for the project. So that leaves us with a net developable area of about 17 acres. So as I mentioned, this is a site that's really covered by wetlands. So you can see the roughly 15 acres of wetlands and the buffer that's around them. The upland area that I was referring to on the east side is in that kind of darker hatched area. So we'll talk about parkland dedication, of course, later in this presentation. You can see that the development is largely concentrated on the west side of this site, really to help preserve the wetlands, the areas that protect them, and cluster the development towards the Goodview Avenue corridor. So looking at what I call bulk standards, these are the lot area, lot width, and setbacks. There are 2 different types of lots proposed in this project. There are lots that have a 50-foot wide, that are 55 feet wide, and there are 25 of those lots proposed, and there are 31 65-foot wide lots. So on the table, you can see in blue, those are the areas where those 55-foot wide lots would be requested to have flexibility, I should say, from the city's ordinance through the planned unit development. So the minimum lot area required here is 7,500 feet. For those 55-foot wide lots, the lot area is proposed to be 6,875 square feet and up from there. And then again, with the minimum standards in the MXR1, the minimum width is 65, but through the PUD, the developer is requesting that 55-foot wide flexibility for 25 of those lots. There are no other setbacks or other flexibilities requested for this project, so the flexibilities have been minimized by the developer to those 2 areas. Just providing a kind of a brief overview of what's proposed here in terms of the public improvements, the streets, the trails, and the utilities. As I noted, there are public street connections required here, connecting Granada Avenue through the project, and in addition, creating that connection to Goodview. There is a sidewalk proposed on one side of all streets, except for the cul-de-sac per the city's policy. Street A is the street that connects to Goodview. The city engineer's comments do include a requirement to move the sidewalk from the north side of Street A to the south side. That's really to help provide future connectivity for pedestrians in the area. There's a park, if you cross the street across Goodview Avenue, there is a park on the south side of that street. So there is also a trail that's proposed on the south side of this project coming off of Granada Avenue North. That trail is currently shown to kind of just dead end into the open space area, and that's intentional. That's because the future of that trail corridor has not yet been figured out. The alignment has not yet been fully City water and sewer connections will be made through the street corridors, public right-of-way serving the single-family home units. On this slide, I did show in a red box an area where there will be a utility corridor planned that will connect utilities that currently terminate on the south side of the development north of this site that would need to be connected through this site should development ever occur in the surrounding area. So in the conditions for approval, there is a requirement that the developer provide appropriate easements for that utility and potentially roadway corridor. So here's an aerial of the property. I just want to talk pretty quickly about tree removal and landscaping. So as you'll notice, the trees on this property, the woodlands, are primarily concentrated on the east side of the site. And those trees will be largely preserved through this project and the land dedication that's proposed. So we did get a removals plan from the developer that shows some tree removals that will occur on this property. Obviously try to minimize the tree removal by concentrating the development on the west side. The landscaping plan shows trees that will be planted when the development is constructed. There are 4 trees provided per lot, which would meet the city's landscaping minimums for residential projects. This landscaping plan may need some revisions as we move into the final plat portion of the development, just to make sure that there's no issues with utility conflicts or something like that. All right, so I've mentioned land dedication. The developer is proposing to dedicate the half of this site to the city as open space and parkland dedication. So the city's ordinance requires 3.27 acres of parkland dedication. Looking at the east side of this development, the city's ordinance really allows or requires usable land to be provided. Usable land is really land that's not encumbered by either a wetland or a buffer that's supposed to protect the wetland. So that land has to be usable by the city. There are 6.21 acres of called it upland areas that are proposed by the developer, so that would more than satisfy the city's parkland dedication requirements. Staff have had some pretty high-level conversations about this area, and there are some unique opportunities with the type of park that could be potential. Moving into the review of the planned unit development, of course, we talked about some of the flexibilities that have been requested and the benefit of the city through this project. So staff have provided PUD criteria. I'm not going to read them all, but they're in the report and we can talk about them if you have any questions. Staff are also recommending certain conditions of approval should the city approve the project. So there are 5 here with some, so I call them sub-conditions. Generally, these are fairly standard conditions for approval. Things like making corrections to the final plans, making sure that we get the necessary easements that I've discussed, making sure that the development improvements are at the developer's expense, making sure wetland buffers are protected, and if mass grading does occur before the final plat, making sure there's an agreement in place. So staff are very comfortable recommending an approval to the Planning Commission and City Council. But I do need to mention that we do have a public hearing, as you know, for this item. So I know that the city has received 1 written comment regarding the project that I believe you all have. And I would also note that there was a neighborhood meeting held on September 24th here at City Hall that the developer attended and provided some time for answering questions from nearby residents. So I know that some folks were able to make it out to that. So that's all I have formally prepared for you. Of course, there's the staff report as well, but I'm happy to take your questions.
Before I delve into questions, are you looking for 1 motion or 2 tonight? 1 for the PUD and 1 for the preliminary
It
plat?
depends on, I suppose, what is preferred by the Planning Commission or Development Director.
Yeah, I think you certainly can make it in 1 motion, but it hasn't been uncustomary for this planning commission to choose to make it in 2 separate ones, especially if you want to approve a portion but deny a different portion of it.
Thank you. Questions for staff? Susan?
What is the impervious surface calculations generally on these lots? As I look at the maps and I played with some of the numbers, this is an area that swampy. It doesn't have a whole lot of drainage to it. I'm really concerned with runoff and impervious, and I need to trust y'all that you've done and that Forest Lake Comfort Lake has done the calculations, but as with a couple of our other developments recently, there is not a lot of infiltration area here.
Happy to take a crack at the question here. So the developer has provided a stormwater management and stormwater report that the city's engineering department's reviewed. There are 2 stormwater ponds that are planned on the site. Those stormwater ponds are planned and designed to take the stormwater that's generated on this property so that it does not intensify any stormwater issues in this area. The developer has had an opportunity to review the MXR1 impervious surface and has not requested flexibility to impervious for these individual single-family home lots.
And this is a staff question. These backyards that are fronting onto the stormwater ponds and the infiltration areas, I understand that a condition is going to, of approval is going to be that each yard be marked with a lathe or whatever to say this is the limit beyond which you can put a deck or a shed or whatever. Those last about half a season. What is the city's plan for enforcing those limitations? As we've seen more and more of these shallow backyards and more interest in residents in saying, okay, I want a deck area, I want to be able to have some fire pit or put a shed or something back there. What is the city's plan for enforcing these over time?
I can start by saying, well, typically the city's going to require the installation of wetland buffer signage that hopefully lasts more than 1 season. Usually the materials that are provided are sturdy enough to do that. They're not removed. So I guess that would be the first part of the answer to that question, but I'll see if Abby has anything else to add in terms of long-term.
So Nathan is correct, at least when it comes to wetlands and wetland buffers, they are required to be marked. And yes, neighbors take them out sometimes. Watershed District also does have regular compliance inspections that occur. When it comes to stormwater ponding, we don't necessarily have those same limitations as we do of non-disturbance like we do towards a wetland. But properties are required to have, I was just looking it up, I believe it's a 30-foot minimum setback in that rear yard area. So we will allow for sheds in those areas. That is something that is allowed by our code, but our structures, including decks and other appurtenances, would not be allowed in there through that standard building permitting process. Then if there was some sort of other construction, it would be a complaint-based like anywhere else in the city because we're not actively going through backyards to monitor the development back there. Does that help address the question?
I'm hoping that as these homes are sold, that folks are told you aren't going to have room for, significant decks and things like that behind your homes.
Well, at least just let you know that one of the practices the city staff does have is when we are reviewing building permits, if we do see things like ledger boards on a building permit plan, we will require that they show how a deck could be built within that setback area, even if they're not proposing that deck at this time, just to help ensure that we're not building to that setback now with the presumption that an additional, feature could be added later. We do have some checks and balances in place to help prevent those, what I think have kind of maybe been some historic, sometimes communities had variances where people come and say, I bought this house and I didn't know it has the ledger board and I should be able to build a deck, but you're telling me it's built to the lot line or to the setback line. We try to make sure that that sort of stuff doesn't happen like it maybe did in the past.
I didn't realize that. Thank you very much.
Other questions of staff? Excuse me. Hearing none, would the applicant, I assume the applicant's here? Would you like to say a few words? I ask you state your name and address for the record, please.
Yep, Tracy Rust with Twin Cities Land Development. Chair and Commissioners, thank you very much. We welcome the opportunity to come to Forest Lake. Nathan, thank you for the presentation. Not a lot to add. Did want to, though, address the stormwater. So if you look at that plan, and there are those two ponds, that one is actually very large, and that's for a reason. So what we have looked at the engineering, and honestly, I am actually a civil engineer as well, so I can speak the language. I haven't designed in years, but that pond is bigger because we're actually digging out to raise the site so that, yes, there's a reason that there are a lot of wetlands on this site. It's because it is low, it's flat. So we're using those basins to actually raise it up so that we do have good drainage, and which then also in turn, we do have that volume in those ponds as well. So, but other than that, yeah, if you have any questions for me, it's pretty straightforward, I like to think. We're excited to be here at Forest Lake, so.
What's your target market?
We have, for this one, first time and buyers as well. So that's why there's two different products. So the 55 honestly can be anything from first time buyers. It can be single moving in for the first time. It can be families, new families with smaller kids. It can also be for buyers as well. So second houses for the 65-foot lots.
One of the things that I did notice in your materials that you provided to us ahead of time was that, one of your targets was families that are moving into the school district for good reason. My concern is that by the time you have a couple of 16-year-olds, 5 to 13-year-olds, there just isn't much room for them to play and do basketball, and I'm a soccer fiend, so yeah. And two, I am really concerned about the on-street parking, especially since we have restrictions in the wintertime against any on-street parking. Any thoughts on that, please?
I will say that I have a 16-year-old, so, and I do get it. I guess to touch on kids and play areas and parks and things like that, obviously this area has been discussed at length, I think, and will continue to be discussed. I did sit in on the park meeting, and then also the last, the Chestnut Creek second edition. I was here for that meeting as well. We have other properties that are under contract right in this vicinity. So we are interested in talking about how all that park works, from not just the east side of our development, but further out, further east and maybe south and maybe even a little north, on how all of that comes together as far as how that park works. So for us, the intent is that, there's no park here. There's sidewalks, there's trails to get people to those locations. So that, again, I know the city is trying to come up with a plan as to what that looks like. But which is why we don't have any park here. Instead of doing the little pocket parks that the city then has to maintain, this is providing that connectivity to what will become more of a city, larger park area. So.
I am trying to learn from my previous mistakes. And since you were here at the Chestnut Creek meeting, telling folks that there will be a park in the future. And it doesn't happen. Is not something that I want to repeat here.
Right. So.
Thank you
which-
very
yeah,
much.
Which is again, that dedicating that east side there, dedicating more and hoping that can also connect to other properties as well. As far as the parking, I mean, the streets are, they are to code, so, and we do all live in Minnesota, and you're not the only ones that restrict parking in the wintertime, so I think
Absolutely.
everybody, knows that for the most part.
Thank you.
Other questions for the applicant?
I've got one.
Yeah.
Yes.
What was your target market price for these houses?
So these will start, we do have the builder already for this development, and they're saying they'll probably start at the low 400s.
And also, as everybody knows, in Forest Lake, we love our toys. So there's really nowhere to put a shed or storage for, let's say, a boat, ATV, motorcycle, jet ski.
So I was at the meeting that the Chestnut Creek second was at, and I believe that you did approve, I think that's one of the reasons why that, not Chestnut Creek, but I can't remember the name.
The condominium,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think that's why those things are coming in too, is because you can't, there isn't always room, on your property to have all that stuff. So, at what point do you, is a 4-car garage enough? Is a 5-car garage enough? I mean, I think everybody's different and,
Well, I know like in our neighborhood, the lots are wider and longer. I have a 3-car attached garage, I have a 3-car detached garage. And they're all full, plus the yard is full, but,
yeah, right.
but
Yeah,
I
the more
mean,
room you have, the more stuff you have, right?
in Forest Lake, we do like our boats, so to find a spot to, like, there's only 7.5 feet next to your garage, so you can't really
Right.
tuck a boat in there.
And, it's based on this location too, and trying to be that, we're sandwiched in between 2 existing developments and 2 different densities as well. So we're trying to meet the density that's required for this. And then also try to, which is why we put the smaller lots to the north and the larger lots to the south. And yeah, if we went with larger lots, we're not going to hit the density on this one. So I think
Thanks.
it's the area.
I know we always have this density issue, and I missed the January meeting, which was the concept, but I will voice my displeasure, and you're going to get the brunt of it, on these 55-foot wide lots. I'm not a fan of them. We went from 15,000 square foot lots and 80-foot width to 7,565. The expectation being we would not have to go under that. Here I got almost 50% of the development that's going to be 55 feet. So since you have other properties you're working on, I would like you to keep that in mind, that you got one guy who's not happy about the 55. I don't need an apology, I don't need a,
Understood. How's that?
I'm not a fan. And one of the reasons we went to the smaller lots is to eliminate PUDs also. We didn't want to do as many PUDs. And as soon as we go to these smaller lots, now we have to do a PUD. So it's just a comment that where I sit on the planning commission, that I like conformance to the half the lot size we were requiring.
Understood.
Thank you for taking my comment.
Well, and I would
Andy?
express, I am also not a fan of the small lots, especially with the requirements to put in 4 trees per lot. What little bit of green space you have is now going to have a tree that, once it becomes mature, oftentimes has to be wedged around the house. So I think we need to have a bigger discussion as a city on whether or not we want to keep these density requirements, but making exceptions to make the lots even smaller, I think is really something that we shouldn't continue to do.
Any other comments for the developer?
And I just want to remind us that the density that the city has been saying we need to meet, as is stated in the staff report, is future land use densities. Not as, if what's in here is correct, is not on the requirements today. And I understand the desire of staff to work with developers who are looking for the increased densities. It goes to your ability to profitably develop. But, yeah,
Losing me, Susan.
been there, done, never mind. So,
Here, can I just make a comment for
Yes,
the
ma'am.
record? The property is guided for the low to medium density residential that needs to meet a minimum of 3 units per acre, but can go up to 6 units per acre. The city adopted that future land use plan, and that future land use plan is for the future of when it is being developed, when it's going from that agricultural use to this, what is going to be its next lifetime, probably forever. We have some challenges as a community with density and achieving those density requirements. And staff is working with our Met Council partner on how we might be able to reevaluate the calculation for density. But right now, we are very limited on the land area that can be exempted to help achieve that density. So I agree with you, Chair Gerard. We did, just within the last few years, reduce that minimum lot area to try to achieve those densities. But unfortunately, it was not enough. If you took the developable land area and take out what we can pull out by Met Council standards and just did 65-foot lots, this development would not meet the comp plan requirements that we adopted of a minimum of 3 units per acre. And I only state that for the record as just a reminder that we do have the comp plan that is guiding the development that's before you. That it isn't always necessarily the developer asking for concessions because they want more or want an increased profit. So they are trying to achieve our demands in our comp plan.
Mr. Chair, at some point on a future planning commission meeting, I would like us to explore if we were to change our comp plan so that we were allowing the larger lots that most of us have thought of, considered, what the penalties would be and how enforceable the Met Council's thoughts are.
I certainly can prepare something for you, but they will stop providing us with sewer for our developments. That's an action that they take in the Met Council boundary.
The big stick.
That's the big stick.
It's a very big stick. Thank you. We may have questions later after the
Absolutely.
public hearing,
Yeah, thank you.
or if someone needs clarification. Thank you for coming this evening. Excuse me, this is a public hearing. We ask if anyone wants to speak to this application, step up, state your name and address for the record. Spend a couple of minutes giving your thoughts on the proposal. Once we have heard from everyone interested in speaking, we will close the public hearing, and then we will bring it back for further discussion and a decision by the Planning Commission. And I have one name on the open for the sign-in, and so I have Julie Severson.
Hi, thank you. My name is Julie Severson. My address is 6511 207th Street North in Forest Lake. And I am directly affected by this development that's going in because it backs up to my backyard. I wrote down a whole bunch of notes that I wanted to go over, but you guys have pretty much covered most of it already. The major thing was the skinny itty bitty little lots, 55-foot lots. When I was here talking to the developer a couple weeks ago, one of the things that came up was that the green space was not going to be developed. What I'm wondering is, was that green space, the wetlands, ever going to be developed? Or is it just is that gonna be eyed up for future development? Because what was also told was that green space, the wetland space, was not going to be developed in exchange for the 55-foot lots. So if that's the case, what guarantees do we have in the community that that green space, once it's deeded over to Forest Lake, that will never, ever, ever be developed? I mean, if that's a trade-off for these itty-bitty little lots that you can't put a swing set on, you can't put a shed on, you can't put a deck on, you can't do anything, what guarantees do we have that we're gonna be stuck with these lots, but the green space at some point then will be eyed up and then developed? Then we kind of traded our backyards for more development. Even the 65-foot lots still, I believe, are rather small. They made them 65 feet, but they also shortened them, so they're not really that much bigger than the 55-foot lots. And the 7.5 feet between a house and the property line, I mean, you're talking 15 feet between one house and the next house. You're gonna be able to look into the next person's window and see what they're having for breakfast. I mean, there's not a lot of room for moving around, running around, anything like that. So that's my biggest concern, is the size of these lots. The drainage, I believe, has already been addressed. I know somebody emailed about drainage, and there's overflow ponds to address that. One of the other questions I had was about basements, and I was told that all of these houses were going to have basements. Well, if it's kind of questionable, wetlandy type property, land, are they really gonna have basements? Because then I turn around and worry about property values. Me and all my neighbors have larger lots, we have basements, we have, a little bit of room. If they turn around and say, oh no, we're gonna put slab houses because of whatever reason, then what's that gonna do to my property value? And I like the idea about the, going back for the future land use densities. I tell you what, we have all these apartment buildings going up all over the place. Isn't that taken into account for the land use densities? Because we got a lot of apartment buildings going in. I guess I would like to see larger lots in Amberley Woods rather than the smaller lots is my big thing. I have a 4-year-old granddaughter. She's going to be learning to ride a bike here. I don't want to have to worry about her trying to dodge cars with the construction equipment and everything else, which I know it's going to happen. This is the better outcome of developers coming in and giving plans as compared to past developers, which I'm sure everybody knows. So, I mean, everybody in the neighborhood is kind of resigned to the fact that this is going to happen. It's just a matter of, we want to do it with the least amount of stress to the people that are currently living here. And, the least amount of just damage, everything that's involved with the development. And that's all I had.
Thank you for your comment.
Thank you.
Does anyone else wish to speak to this application?
Hi, my name is Rachel Goblish. I live at 20653 Granada Avenue North. I really just have a question. I'm sorry if I'm coming in uneducated. Can you show me or describe how Granada Avenue North will come into the Sterling Oaks neighborhood?
Can we get you have a little better, there we go. So if you look at the right side of the screen, that's Street C,
Yep,
that will attach to Granada, which is currently there.
yep.
And then we lost the picture.
Sorry. I was trying to find a better aerial. so
That's okay.
I'll
And
leave it here.
then it comes through and it becomes Street B, and then Street B will connect to Granada to the south.
It essentially takes a jog.
Yeah, I think
So leaving Sterling Oaks, it would go west to
Correct.
connect, okay.
Sterling Oaks is to the north,
The
correct?
Granada Avenue on the top, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yep,
Yeah.
Granada
Yes.
Avenue,
that's that Street C there. You can see it on the right side of the screen.
yep.
And then it curves, then it drops down and becomes Street B, and Street
Okay.
B joins up with Granada on the south end.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else wish to speak to this application? For the record, we did receive one email from Marlene Weiss concerning drainage in the wetlands, which we covered, and then some safety issues with children in the smaller lots. So, last call for anyone who wishes to speak to this application. Seeing no one come forward and having no more emails to read into the record, we'll close the public hearing at 6:40 PM. Commissioners, what's your pleasure?
Chair Gerard, may I address one inquiry that was made during the public comment
Yes.
portion about the preservation of the open space being deeded to the city?
Yes.
The city would require that that is deeded as parkland, and when we deed something as parkland, it is bound to that use in perpetuity. This would be owned by the city. The city is not looking to build the road extending through Greystone through here. The intent is to have the land for a wooded parkland area. Yes, we don't have a plan. We understand that some neighborhoods are in areas that don't have park directly built right away. But we see this as an opportunity for parkland dedication of a significant woodland stand of forest in Forest Lake, where we don't really have this type of recreational amenity. And so we have been in discussions with adjacent landowners and prospective developers and builders about the acquisition, future acquisition of additional dedicated parkland to create a larger woodland and active recreation system to service quite a large part of the neighborhood, or, you know, the several of the neighborhoods in this area. But back to the question that's shown up on there, that whole east half would be dedicated for parkland purposes. The only caveat is we will need to extend a utility line through here. And as we need to do that, we are reserving the right to extend Greystone should we ever need maybe a parkway through the park. But we don't anticipate building that. But we are reserving that right for a roadway and utility easement through the park.
Commissioners, discussion, comments, motions?
I'll make a comment if I may. I mean,
Absolutely.
as all of us, we're in agreement on lot size. This is something we struggle with and have. I've been on the commission, I don't know how many years now, and it's a constant struggle to meet this 3 units per acre. I actually, in terms of the development and the way they've done the streets, I think they've done a good job with it with what they have. But our hands are tied in a lot of ways when it comes to those lot sizes. In terms of the streets, the one nice thing about the way it's laid out, you know, you're not going to have, yes, cars are going to be going through there, but with the intersections and the turns and such, I would think the speeds and that sort of thing's not going to be as much of an issue. But all of us agree that it's a challenge, making that three lots per acre. Or, yeah, three units.
Break.
Yeah.
Other comments, concerns, questions? The chair is looking for a motion.
Abby, we have done some 2-motion and some single motion. Does staff have a preference?
My preference, if you're moving to approve both of them, is just doing it with a single motion.
One swell swoop?
One fell swoop. 2 birds, 1 stone. How many could we do tonight, huh?
Okay. Chair, I will make a motion that we recommend to the city council the preliminary plat and the planned unit development, subject to the conditions in the staff report regarding the need to meet the requirements of the city engineer, the requirements for the public right-of-ways, the applicant and developer being responsible for installing all their required right-of-way improvements to ensure the long-term wetland and buffer compliance and clarity for future homeowners. And should the applicant desire to conduct the mass grading, that they enter into an agreement with the city and that they meet all requirements of the city engineer and the Forest Lake Comfort Lake Watershed District.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second. Do I have any discussion?
Here, can I just ask a clarifying question on the motion? Commissioner Young, were you just summarizing for the record the conditions that are listed in the staff report?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify. I went through them and it looks like we caught them all, but there was, there's subparts and stuff there, and I just want to verify that it's with the conditions of approval recommended by staff as
And with
summarized.
and with the specific statement of meeting all conditions of the city engineer and the Forest Lake Comfort Lake Watershed Association.
I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
The developers have done a very good job following the rules and the guidance presented to them. I think what this commission is saying that, not specifically to this project, but to all projects in the future, we need to, as a city, decide whether or not we're going to be governed by, we're pretty much as far away from the metro as you can get by still being in the 7-county. Why should we be held to the same standards as urban metro areas? So I hope the council can hear that there's frustration from this board that we have to accept these small lots.
And I want to remind the city that Forest Lake was one of the first communities to go in on the transportation tax. And the Met Council abandoned us. We are, with regard to the transit that the city established. Their bad faith on that should help to color our responses.
Thank you. Other comments? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. So what happens now is that we are making a recommendation to the city council. The city council will take this up
Monday?
next Monday,
Oh,
which is, I don't know, someday,
October 27th,
October, thank you.
right here at 6 PM.
They will not be taking public comment during the discussion of this. If you want to comment, you will need to comment at the open forum at the beginning of the meeting. So it'll be 7 o'clock here on Monday evening.
Or Chair Gerard, also, any comments written in writing, we can include in the packet for distribution or hard copy distributed before the meeting, at the meeting.
Thank you all for coming tonight. Good luck with your project. Moving on to item 8, it's discussion of Headwaters 123 land use.
Hi, Chair Gerard, members of the Planning Commission. In 2026, the city approved a planned unit development for the Forest Lake final, the Headwaters PUD. As part of that, Headwaters 123, now commonly referred to as Headwaters 123, was included in that planned unit development and guided the property for townhome and single family. Included that original plan from the early 2000s for your reference. In early 2021, the city, after recommendation, and I don't know which way the Planning Commission recommended, but the City Council approved a comprehensive plan amendment and a zoning map amendment to rezone and re-guide the Headwaters 123 property for business park use. At the time, it really was the desire to start marketing the property for office, medical, and industrial uses. Then the last year, and I should note, there was a specific desire to try to secure a data center on the site. We've learned within the last year that site is not desirable a desirable site for a variety of reasons for a data center. And in a meeting with the EDA and the city council earlier this year, the EDA and the council said, hey, you know, you're in negotiations for the data center right now, but if they end up walking, let's really revisit what we're doing here, because the intent of changing the code was to create a job center, create, you know, some more tax base. And the city has been hanging on this property for a while with none of that. And at the time, they reviewed some older concept plans, even some newer concept plans that the EDA had reviewed or had drafted 24 maybe, that kind of looked at some data center sites or job center sites or designs. At the meeting, the EDA and the council said, hey, if a data center isn't really in the cards, we should probably rethink our development pattern through here and really start to focus on building opportunities for new living wage jobs and an increased tax base, like one of the #1 goals for the site. Consider maybe a portion of that Headwaters site along the parkway for some maybe additional service retail, a small amount, but almost to kind of bookend or mirror the north side. Kind of when you're heading in, you've got a little bit of a service retail center right at the kind of intersection-ish with Highway 61. And then potentially a smaller portion of the site for some residential. This was most specifically talked about in the southwest corner because there's been recent inquiries about a request was made to the city council to sell a portion of Headwaters 123 for residential development in the southwest corner. All of this came to staff from the EDA and the council when I mentioned to them if we wanted to sell this for residential tomorrow, we could. But the council and the EDA said we really don't think it's in our best interest to go back to residential. So the EDA has determined that they'd like to move forward with finding a development partner and to try to start looking at developing an overall concept plan, development plan for the site, likely through an RFP, a request for proposal process. The idea being, let's throw this out to the development community and see if somebody wants to partner with us and what kind of partnership they envision. Prior to moving forward though, the EDA said, hey staff, why don't you go back to the Planning Commission and talk about land uses, just to make sure that before we start any processes, public processes, that if there needs to be any sort of zoning amendments or not, that the Planning Commission, you know, is favorable to that. Great point, right? So tonight before you is to really talk about the existing business park use, whether or not you're liking that business park use still, which staff isn't recommending changing, nor was the EDA. But more for commission discussion is kind of the land on the north side of Headwaters Parkway, zoned, the land on the north side of the parkway right now is zoned neighborhood commercial, whether or not you'd want to see some of those neighborhood commercial services for the neighborhood along that parkway on the south side of the parkway. And then whether or not you'd want to see on the west side of Fenway Avenue any sort of residential, knowing that residential will be on the west side of Fenway Avenue. Tonight, this is just a discussion item. All we're here to do is to gain from you your thoughts on are you in favor of the direction the EDA and council have guided us for? And if not, you know, what do you think about kind of those future land uses? I understand that, oh, shoot. Give me just a second to get my screen.
Well, that was our serenity moment.
It's that serenity moment. I always think that'd be nice to be there, but I love that I'm here right now.
Oh, smooth.
Almost believable.
Yeah, almost believable. I'm with Andy on that one.
I
Almost believable.
actually, as I was speaking, I'm like, don't go there. Don't go there. You're doing great. No, I am happy to be here to have this conversation. I think this is a really important conversation for the community. So again, here is the final master PUD that was a part of the Headwaters, kind of, I think about that as Headwaters Village, but then that residential component from early 2006. Here again is that residential component. Not going to point it out, but those are some little lots. Look at those 50, 60, 52-foot wide lots. Anyways, 2017, a mixed-use concept where we did again have some larger, potentially retail uses, some row house units, and then maybe some single-family along the golf course and along some wetland areas. And then in I think it's 24, probably says it in here. Nope, it doesn't. The EDA kind of went through this exercise of looking at these different concepts with a consultant to look at kind of a campus side design with a data center, the idea of a job center. The EDA really kind of focused on, at the time, I must have just only included, I think there was 4, but more of this job center design. But at the time, the EDA didn't want to show this to the public. They were like, yeah, we want to try to break this up, probably not quite like that, and we didn't want to give anybody the image of that. So what, again, that would be, so what staff and the EDA, or what the EDA and the council kind of directed staff to do is explore utilizing the vast majority of the site for the jobs-based business park uses, technology, manufacturing, officing.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Look at these two over here. They're like, yes, yes. That maybe some of those uses along the parkway, especially where they sneak up closer to Highway 61, kind of mirror that north side. And then down in this southwest corner, we've got one piece of property that's a very funky property of whether or not some residential down in this bordering the golf course might be appropriate. So I'm going to just stop talking and throw it out there to hear what your thoughts are on the EDA moving forward with an RFP and potential land uses along through here.
Commissioners?
Can you pull up like a current map? So we
The
can,
aerial.
yeah, just to
Sure
see
can.
what's really already developed and what's not.
And working with this RFP, I mean, we're not committed to anything. We're joining with some developers that have experience and can bring us some ideas
That's-
based on other areas.
What the RFP process does is it's a request for proposals.
Yeah.
What we're doing is we're saying development community, we're interested in finding a development partner. What can you offer? And how would you structure a partnership, a public-private partnership? We're not obligated in any way to enter into any partnership with anyone, but the whole idea was we're probably not going to get somewhere if we don't start engaging with the development community on this. Commissioner Aplikowski, just for reference, this is the new Bridge Academy and Sweet Living, so a daycare, childcare center, Bell Bank. This is the new Forest Creek Apartments, the vet center, the county service center, and the YMCA is kind of what's on that north side that I think the EDA saw some opportunity just maybe right through here to kind of bookend that entrance. I don't know if there's a better way to kind of say it, but to maybe kind of feel like, okay, you get a little bit of that service for the neighborhood right there. But then really, and kind of buffering from potential technology, officing.
All those lots to the right of the 123, those are all in private hands, correct?
These are all in private hands. Many of the homes, I'm not sure if I'll be able to click on them, sit on their own little kind of, tax parcel where the tillable acreage in the back sits on its own. The city has not been in contact, city staff has not been in contact with any of these landowners through here. We've heard some of them may be interested in selling property, but at the same time, we have not been going out and soliciting anybody's opinion on the matter at the moment.
Well, we haven't been real fond of being landowners.
Pardon?
City hasn't been real fond of being landowners for being a real estate.
Acquiring more land.
Well, I mean,
We
I-
are landowners.
We are landowners, and frankly, I mean, before the city invested in the community development department, my position, you didn't have anybody that was even in a great position to be going out and helping buy and sell land on our behalf. It takes some energy, and having those resources just hasn't been something the city has had. I would not advocate right now that we necessarily go out to try to purchase land adjacent to Headwaters 123, because as my mom would say, with what? Buttons or good looks. But again, engaging with the private development community might have better desire to go to adjacent landowners to be looking at how could we include them in a process such as this.
Commissioners, this is free reign in here, so if anyone's got a comment, have at it.
I was pretty adamantly opposed to putting the apartments, the two sets of apartments in that area, and have not been a fan of apartments on the Shadow Creek site because there are a large number of dwellings, both in Headwaters existing, in those apartment buildings and the future apartment buildings, in the Chestnut Creek and things to the west of Chestnut Creek that have no access to services such as a grocery store, a pardon me, I call them Stop and Robs, convenience stores. That's what we called them in Tulsa. There's nothing in this area that people can get at, but we've put really, really high density in there as transit oriented or, walkable or whatever. We need some services. Hub's a long way away. Festival down in Hugo is a long way away. And if we are saying that we are community and we want people to shop and to be able to live in this community without having to go elsewhere for their stuff, we got nothing in this area.
No, so a few years ago, I'm going to zoom out a little bit. A few years ago, we did have a conversation with the Met Council about the transit system because we do have a transit center right in that area. Met Council Transit, that daily service isn't coming back anytime soon, but
Ever. They've said ever.
I never heard never. But we still maintain with the county and Met Council that we will retain that service center for the hope of transit. I will note, a few years ago, I had heard that Forest Lake has had a saturation in the grocery or the grocery market because of Cub, Aldi, and both Target and Walmart are considered grocers, right? They do provide those services. And now we also have Mike's Discount Foods. That being said, I have also heard talk that there is a grocer exploring the Highway 97 corridor right now. Don't know where that could go, but know at least that market might be changing some, but for the city's population, this isn't a desirable spot because the population, there isn't enough households to support it now.
The problem isn't the number of places. There's umpty squat places.
I understand the proximity.
They're not in the right place.
Generally, I mean, cities and through their EDAs do things like attract grocers by providing land subsidies, those sorts of things for them to relocate for certain time periods within, a time frame that they would stay. I think one of the challenges with this is that's often done with local grocers, right? So,
You can't even get a cup of coffee in this area.
Well, I think, see, that's a good point. The grocery thing, I think, is changing. I think it's changing incredibly. I mean, I think of how much I used to go to Cub Foods. I never go to Cub Foods now. I do the pickup. I do order all my groceries online. I go to pickup in Walmart or wherever, and they load them in my truck. I am there and out of there in 10 minutes. And a lot of people are doing the same thing. I don't think groceries much, coffee shops and, places to get your hair cut or, that, yeah, that's needed in this community. But the grocery thing, I don't know that it's not what it used to be. I think that's changing with all these pickup and delivery now. I mean, I could get Walmart or Target or whoever delivering my groceries too. I don't, but a lot of people do.
Nobody picks out my fruits, vegetables. and
Well, you see, and maybe that's what it needs. Maybe it's a produce something, then, and you're getting your other stuff delivered. 'Cause I'm the same way. Yeah, I want to go pick out my avocados or whatever, but I don't go up and down the aisles. No way. But I do it all from my phone. Wake up in the middle of the night and I think of what I need and
add
it
it
up
to
at-
the list.
yeah.
To me, I find this area a hard sell, and the reason I say that is we have the freeway at Broadway there, and you have access to everybody and their brother, whether it's Chisago, Wyoming, Stacy, actually all the way up to North Branch. In fact, past North Branch, if you want to go to Menards or Home Depot. And then you get the people that are cutting over to Wisconsin on 97, but they come down another half a mile up. To me, the location doesn't yield retail to me. I mean, to me, it's like a desert here of, you don't have access on 61. You don't have any visibility. It's kind of, I have Pizza Pub right out by me. And restaurant after restaurant's gone in there, but there's no year-round visibility, so it's hard for these places to succeed then. Versus, let's take the Log Cabin on 97, a billion people, not a billion, but a lot of people drive. Currently not as many with the freeway closed over, but, so I think this is gonna be a hard sell property regardless of, I look at it from a commercial standpoint. And if you got semis coming in, your freeway access is marginal. It's doable. And maybe to Don's comment, if you get the hair cutters and some retail in there, you might be able to get a doctor's office, or something. But I think that's a lot of land for.
Staff would never recommend that we change this to retail. I do support the EDA and the council's direction that the large majority of the land is still retained for business park, for some sort of manufacturing, technology, again, officing. But that question of a small portion of retail service along the parkway as that capstone as the other half of the capstone to the northern side. And I think that's the part that would be slightly inconsistent with that underlying zoning. And maybe more the big opinion of the commission is, would you rather see this all for jobs? Or would you want to try to reserve a little bit of land area along the parkway? Maybe it's this location, for some of those things that are just kind of supporting those neighborhoods.
You live south of 97, I mean, y'all live, well, I don't know if all of you. If you live south of 97, you're toast. I mean, your options are Cub and trying to get there from south of 97 and east of 61 to the Royal Palin-Tail, or Festival down in Hugo. So I grant that we're in kind of a weird place, those of us that are south of 97, but that's where we're putting a boatload of houses now. Are south of 97.
It's where land is guided.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
and-
where
and-
developments.
Could use a
And-
gas station.
Well, that corner at Highway 50, that southeast corner was guided
still is.
originally as a convenience store.
It's still guided for neighborhood commercials, so
Yeah.
the land that the city owns. And as we have been looking at the future Public Works building, looking at the position, the opportunity for an outlot for still potentially sell off for commercial development in there. It is, I will note, on the kind of opposite side, it's the going home route, right? It's not the, usually, you know, if you're heading westbound on County Road 50, access into that's gonna be a little trickier, probably.
Where do we sit with, you know, we guided, not unanimously, but the southwest corner of the city. Where do we sit with the interstate connection? Has there been any discussion? If it's gonna go to 180th or 170th?
Staff has worked to establish a consortium, we'll say, with the other the four cities, Columbus, Hugo, Lino Lakes, and us.
Hugo,
Columbus, Hugo, Lino Lakes, and us.
yes.
As well as the economic development divisions of the respective counties, so both Anoka County and Washington County. We have a draft, it's not yet ready for release and consideration, but a draft kind of cooperative agreement where we are all starting to cooperatively work together for a design on the Elmcrest Avenue corridor, because that's moving up. Otter Lake Extension in Lino Lakes is getting extended, and all of it's leading to dirt road between, and I'll give a really high level here. So this is our Elmcrest Avenue. City's boundary is the black. This is Hugo in the kind of southeast. Lino Lakes is the southwest, and Columbus is that northwest. The Otter Lake Extension, and forgive me because eventually my streets kind of run out, but if I remember right, like the Otter Lake Extension kind of comes up right here. I think this is it right here. And it's gonna lead into this Elmcrest that's gonna spit everybody out onto gravel roads. And so the four cities and the EDA said, this is a challenge. And we need to agree to a design to the Elmcrest corridor at this point, while also working towards agreement on an interchange and where we can all say that we agree it should be. Because there has not been unilateral agreement from all four cities and the counties of where this will go. MnDOT does not have it in their long-range plans at 170th, 180th, 190th, 195th, you name it, because the cities and the counties aren't in agreement. Additionally, MnDOT would say there's no way we would even discuss or plan for an interchange if the local system is not built out yet. So the first step in a lot of this is this baseline kind of regional planning for us to kind of look at what is the design of that roadway and how do we get that built and how do we start getting development in those areas that we all know is gonna come. It's just, we need to get that infrastructure in place first. Does that answer your question, Paul?
Well, it does, sort of,
Okay.
but the answer is no, we don't know where it's going.
Well, no, we
So
don't.
the point being,
It's gonna go on 170th or 180th.
yeah,
And frankly, the whole,
180th would be fabulous for us because.
1 mile away wouldn't be bad either.
Yeah, if they develop the property, the road to get up there. But there could be a lot of manufacturing and what, because you're close to the freeway. You have freeway X, you got semis running in and out of there all day. This is where I say debate the EDA. They're the ones who've got the brains on development of business here. But it just seems it's kind of a one or the other thing for that kind of work, for manufacturing. Now, if you want to say this 123 is medical and officing for the four people that still go in, more power to us. You know, I don't honestly know how you could fill up 123 acres with commercial in that area. To me, it doesn't
So then let's talk about other, you know, I've said it to all three bodies. The council and the EDA would not want to see this completely reverted back to guided towards residential. But then that question about residential along Fenway or residential along the golf course, are those things that this commission would be in support of?
The mayor and council are talking about rooftops. They want rooftops because that's how folks are gonna get the restaurants that they think that they want. Why anybody would go to Buffalo Wild Wings, I don't know, but whatever. But they've been talking rooftops, and if you're looking for density of rooftops, quite frankly, that's what an area where we actually have infrastructure in place. And it sort of fits without trying to shove more residential into the wetland areas that are in much of the rest of the city. I mean, I hear the desire for commercial, but it's a chicken and the egg thing. We're not going to get significant commercial in that area because Paul's right. You can't get there from anywhere else for a significant industrial facility, just because getting the semis in and out is a royal pain in the tail, even with the roundabout at 61 and 97, even with an improved 97, it's still a challenge. And I don't see, without the city putting really big subsidies in there, us seeing significant commercial industrial activity there. And I'm not seeing a benefit of the city sinking even more subsidies into some of the folks that we've given TIF funding to and really haven't seen a big return on our investment.
So you brought up two words tonight that I have not, subsidies and TIF, and neither of those are being contemplated right now. The properties generally, Greenfield is not eligible for tax increment financing. There's some strict limitations in its use. Again, I would maintain that the city should not build this out as residential. We have a lot of land area guided for residential. And as a reminder, for every large vacant residential piece of property we have, it gets added into that density pool and does affect our density requirements as a city. Now, if we want to build this out with multifamily to be able to offset those large lots we want elsewhere, that could be a conversation we have in this next comp plan round. But right now, it's guided for business park. And if we're going to go through, if the planning commission's desire would be to go back to residential, that's a comp plan amendment, and I would say, hold up, we're about to do a whole comp plan process. Let's just sit. But the EDA does want to move forward in this way. And the question is, are you in, it's business park. We'll just go out for an RFP with business park. Would you want to incorporate a little bit of residential and service if the market thought that that was something that could be fitting there?
Andy, you had a comment?
I think I would support going out to try to get someone to do some market research to see what this land could be used for. I think the desire for business is noble, but we've given a lot of red flags of why someone wouldn't want to develop this for a commercial. If you go drive around the metro, anywhere along a highway, they're putting up warehouses. You know, because transit is king. I think Forest Lake is positioned probably very advantageously from a regional eastern Minnesota aspect of if you could find the right big name destination, something or other, Costco, for instance, people will go a little off the road to get to it. people coming down from Duluth no longer have to go all the way down to Maple Grove or Maplewood or something like that. But not that it has to be Costco, but something like that, that is a rare, unique destination would be something that probably would make sense to be that far off the highway. I think the desire to find, and they're closing doctor's offices, they're not building them right now. So I think getting some experts to say this is what you could do with this to guide us rather than us trying to figure out how we want to use it would be a really wise thing. Because I think what we all want differs on this board, and it's going to differ between board to board. So I would support doing some type of research.
And I agree with that. One of the things that I've said for a very long time is that we have a unique place above the split. So that, via Highway 97, you can get to both the western suburbs and east. And that's something that we have really not taken advantage of in any way. Yes, it's harder as you're south of 97 to get to the interstate. You have to go to 97, but being above the split is advantageous from a residential perspective. It's advantageous from a business perspective. I'm just not sure how we beat that chicken and the egg thing for this piece of property. And yes, I would like to see in that little, I'll call it it looks like an elephant to me, the elephant's head and trunk. I would like to see some services, community neighborhood services there.
Got a comment?
No, I just reiterating that, yeah, I think getting an RFP out there, getting the right people who understand development and what the possibilities are to get some ideas from them is
I'm all for the RFP. You asked a question and no one answered up here, is about the residential. And I think down Fenway, because I believe just on the other side of Fenway is a Taylor farm.
Mm-hmm.
And that will eventually, because he's,
All this is guided for residential,
Yeah.
I
And
think
it's all-
MXR one.
I think that having some kind of residential on Fenway as a buffer to the businesses, instead of going all the way to Fenway with businesses, you could put a buffer in there of townhouses or row houses. And down by the golf course, it might be a nice view for an office, but it's some primo real estate when you're on the golf course. Might be better than lakefront, not in my opinion, but. So that's my 2 cents on the residential part. I would not guide the whole thing for residential. I'm with you. We need to get a larger tax base of something besides residential.
So I hear there's consensus that finding a partner to help us is not a bad thing, and that you're all in support of the EDA moving forward with that. And some of you have said, some service along here wouldn't be good, again, if that development partner maybe agreed with that. And I've heard from at least one of you to say, some maybe, I don't want to use the word higher density, some higher densities along Fenway of of family, of
That's the term
residential.
I would use, higher density.
To help buffer from those non-residential uses could be really good land use through there.
Because I think the other side is pretty much single family, right? Once you cross Fenway.
Yes. Yep. So the last question I think I put in my memo was, does anyone, as the EDA starts to work on this process, will end up kind of working through some of this with a committee? Is there anyone on this commission that would like to help in terms of things like reviewing proposals or doing interviews or making recommendations to the EDA and council regarding future proposals that we might get? And if no one is, that's fine, because you do have staff that does help support, implementing the comp plan, understanding the zoning. Your commission is a little different in that you've got now almost a fully staffed team
Yeah.
to help convey at least the intent.
Got a lot of experience in RFPs, and this will be very interesting to me. But I would yield to anyone else up here who's interested.
I'm interested, but I have a full plate, so if you have more interest than me.
Oh,
I
and
don't
also
know
would
the
do it too,
commitment
so.
right now. We haven't quite scoped it out. I will say the EDA has even gone so far as said that they wouldn't mind finding a firm to even draft the RFP that's really well tuned with the development community to make sure that we've got a proposal that's going out there that is kind of consistent with industry standards, that kind of hits the buzzwords. I don't know. So they're still kind of working through what that process is going to look like, but we anticipate the first, maybe second quarter at most in 2026 being a focus to get this done, at least to see, is now the time? And I agree with you, Commissioner Young, and probably all of you that can say we're a really special community, just above the split. We're really desirable for a lot of ways. We are rural, but urban, right? We are standalone. I just said it to somebody the other day. We have this downtown, and we've got the cute farm fields, and we have the lake, and we have a Target, and a Walmart. And, it makes us really, really unique. And it could just be that we're just far enough out. We've been just far enough out, but we're starting to see that development really, really flipping, and we're really starting to think that we want to be at the forefront of that flip, so.
Solid plan.
I've got enough direction to move forward.
Move to updates then. We'll start with our esteemed council person, Mr. Larson. You can just sit there if you want.
That's okay, I need to limp along. Thank you, though.
And you look better on camera there.
Thank you very much. Commissioner and Chair, don't really have too much to pass on. I'd like to say thank you for those that were able to attend on the 9th for our little barbecue. We had some nice weather, but windy, and we enjoyed some hamburgers and brats and some things that folks brought, and I think we had a pretty good turnout for our first annual, and hopefully we can maybe continue it down the road, and we'd like to see more other commissioners and such join us for a nice day.
My thanks for you spearheading that.
My pleasure, sir. Thank you. Other than that, I don't really have a lot, other than just to say thank you very much for all your time and your dedication to our community. It's kind of a thankless job, and but I know we all appreciate you as far as council members and staff. So thank you for that.
Any hot issues or budget update?
The budget still remains. We had a workshop on Monday, and it was attended pretty well. A lot of people were interested in our so-called sales tax matter. It was kind of like the third item down in our agenda, so they got to see some of our other things, like our top 3 for our road construction stuff. And some of those folks afterwards were very much enlightened on how much work, planning, processes, and cost goes into all this stuff. So it's not just throwing some pavement down, rolling it out and saying, here you go, here's your $10 million road. So I think there's some insight on that. The budget still stands at 12.6. We do have some things that we are looking at, and that'll be more of a topic of discussion in the weeks here to come. So we are looking at the possibility of getting it down into single numbers. Can't promise anything, or I can't throw out a certain number, but we're working hard on that. So.
Questions?
One of the hardest lessons I ever learned was that your budget is your policy direction for not only that year, but the next 5 to 10 years.
Yep. unfortunately, things were stalled out for a while, and we're trying to pick that up, and we're the brunt of bad news and so forth, and I guess we'll take it on the chin, but we're moving forward, and we're doing the best we can with what we have to offer, so. We live here too. We make decisions that affect us as well, so.
I have a question along those lines. Since we were looking at a subdivision today with 60 homes, and when you look at a subdivision like that, and you look at what that's gonna bring to the community in terms of revenue and property tax, just property tax, I don't know what other revenues you look at that come to the city. What do you figure the cities, I mean, you figure, I think they were saying the average price of the home was like 400,000 or something like that, so you figure what, $4,000 a year in property tax, that goes to the county, and then what comes to the city is what, half of that? Is there a number you use?
Susan has an answer for that.
We don't necessarily have, I mean, there is probably specific numbers in there. I don't know what they are right now. I can tell you that we not only account for the individual tax on a home, but also any sort of fees for the development. All of those things, you know, are calculated in that next year's projection. We do that on what I would say is, I think if I remember right, we're projecting 100 homes in the 2026 budget. We do account for that as part of the revenue.
Okay.
To
And
offset.
I was just kind of, I know the development fees and those are kind of a one-time thing. It's the property tax that is forever and increases
It is,
forever.
and that is accounted for in the 10-year plan, that projected growth on an annual basis, yes.
I was just curious how, okay.
The actual number, I don't know. off the
Yeah,
top
I
of my
understand.
head.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
In what I'll call the olden days, when I was on that side of the table, we considered that a residential house cost a city over time 1.5 times what the property taxes that it brought in.
Well, then why were you saying we should convert 100 acres?
I said that I'm hearing rooftop
Yes.
to get the restaurants and
Yes.
additional grocery stores.
Yes.
That's what I'm hearing. I didn't say that I thought it was a great idea. That's what I'm hearing. But residential properties cost a city more because
interesting.
Rosenbauer doesn't need a whole lot of police and fire protection. They've got their own stuff. But a house needs the additional fire protection, police protection, sewer services, more wear and tear on the roads.
Building permitting, I mean, all of the things,
Yeah.
yes. That is a statistic. I don't know how that number balances out anymore. But I think his question was more about, are we accounting for that tax revenue as part of the budget and then that long-term financial plan? And yes, we are. If you wanted to see specific numbers, we
No,
can have
no,
our.
I didn't. I was just, it's kind of a bigger topic, and I'll take it up with Jeff at a later time. But I was just curious if there was, if there was a set formula or whatever. But anyway,
There is. We have
Yeah, it's
people
okay.
in
That's
Excel
okay.
spreadsheets that do
We
that.
have people.
we have people.
We got people.
I understand. I understand.
We're not very interesting to talk to, but we got people.
Well, specifically Ellie Larkin, our finance director. So if there are things that you're looking for, we certainly can get that information.
Again, I'll communicate with Jeff, and we can go back and forth on some things. But
Andy?
Yeah, I would just, as we're looking at potential business growth in the city, I would encourage not considering sales tax, local sales tax. Being in Washington County, we're already at a competitive disadvantage to the areas around us. I looked at my receipt from Wisconsin this weekend when we picked up some stuff at the Walmart over there. It's only 5.5%. So people will drive 15 miles to save that amount of money on larger purchases. So as you're working on that,
I think the example that was kind of given is like the Xcel Energy. There is a tax, and there's a tax on it from the city added on to that.
Franchise fee?
Yep, franchise fee, if you will. And there hasn't been any change on that, I guess, since like 2013 or 2014. So like anything else, cost of living increases, the cost of doing business and things like that, that stuff is gonna creep up. So I think as far as the city goes, I think we're kind of looking for something that can also help us with maybe having some extra funding for our building of businesses or community or infrastructure and things like that. We're looking to try to do something more along that line to help us out with our budget stuff. Nobody wants to see the budget up, everyone wants to see it coming down, but we have a fine line of things that are wants and needs list, obviously. So we have to be very particular and careful in our wants and needs list.
And then just to once again reiterate that in the next comp plan, that we reconsider, what our lot sizes are, and maybe consider being one of the cities that says they're gonna shut off our sewers if we don't do what they want, and maybe challenge them on that, because it's not democracy.
Yeah, no, I totally understand where you're coming from, Andy. Like I say, I don't think, a lot of us, I think, are a real big fan of that council really right now with all the stuff that's going on. And they kind of do have us by the short hairs in some respect, but like Commissioner Young said, we're the furthest point, and they haven't really done any favors for us either on that hand. So I don't know if we can get some of our legislation and stuff behind us a little bit to kind of give it a shove. But-
If you could sit down and talk to people, it's illogical to say the only way you can have water and sewer is if you maximize the use of the land of cramming as many houses as you possibly can.
Yeah,
It
with
doesn't
our-
make sense.
Our wetland problem is huge.
They're increasing sewer demand by making us do that.
Yeah, correct. Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, folks. Appreciate you.
Abby?
Yeah, so on the lines of the comp plan, the kind of every 10-year comp plan process is kicked off with the Met Council's release of the system statement for Forest Lake. We received that 2.5 weeks ago or so. I've poured through it to really look to see if there are items in it that the city should be objecting to, which is a different kind of a process in which we, one, consult with the Met Council staff, but do have a formal appeal process that we could undertake. At this time, I don't see anything, but do anticipate that your next meeting, I will be providing an update based on my recommendations of the analysis of that. The Met Council has proposed increasing the city's density to 3.3 units of an acre citywide. We get to choose how we want that housing to be distributed. So when we take all of the open acreage and all of the acreage we say is going to be housing, we get to say, this is where we want large lot, this is where we want medium-sized lots, this is where we want small-sized lots, this is where we want apartment buildings. The larger the lots that we want, the more high density we have to put elsewhere. There are those trade-offs. And so I do think that it is a conversation that I've heard from the community and I've heard from some of the council of taking a harder stance with the Met Council in terms of the density requirements and also some of the affordable housing allocation. But I would say that if it is something that this commission is vehemently opposed to the overall premise of density requirements, that is a conversation we need to have with the council and have the council quick. Because I had not heard that in my 3.5 years here, that we would ever object completely to the density requirements that we have, which there are communities that have done that, one in Washington County, and that Washington County city did not win. And I can provide you with all of that information, but now is the time that we really need to put that in writing to the Met Council.
Again, this is from my memory, but a lot of their density requirements were based on having transit opportunities in the community, having ways of minimizing vehicular traffic, and the way to get those things was to increase density. You know, in the garbage business, okay? If I'm gonna take on a new city, I want to have as many stops per mile as I can get. All right, that's how you decide if you're gonna go there or not. And in a way, that's still look to density, try and reduce your costs. That's not something that is going to be helpful for Forest Lake, because the Met Council did inform us through their last transportation plan that they will not be bringing transit, at least in the next 25 to 30 years, to the Forest Lake area. Yeah, we still got Greyhound, okay, and they're still doing their thing. But in terms of the reasons for increasing density and having a density requirement from the Met Council.
Still have Greyhound?
It's the one that goes between here and Duluth. I mean, it goes from St. Paul to Duluth, and it goes like twice a day.
It's the Arrowhead Transit.
Thank you.
And you can take a Met Council transit link to the bus station here, or the transit center here, and get on Arrowhead Link, which services portions of Chisago County and goes all the way to Duluth.
As somebody who is now driving for Thrive, because folks in our community had not been able to get Transit Link on a regular basis, that service is woefully inadequate. We've had to compensate with a bunch of volunteers driving people in Forest Lake that can't use their service.
On that note, I just will say on that note, we are in discussions with Washington County and Nutrax about expanded services for senior citizens in the community, to not only include expanded services on the standard operating day on Wednesdays, but the potential for adding another day. So I'll keep all of you posted as the council and the county work through potential agreement amendments.
Nathan, anything?
No updates for me tonight.
Of course I do. I also wanted to echo Councilman Larson's mentioning of the picnic. It was a wonderful time. I really appreciate him and the council spearheading that, mostly because it gave me the opportunity to have the very best brownies I've ever had in my life, made by Commissioner Young. You were sold out as soon as I asked about them. So one thing I want to implore is that you give me the recipe, because I'm convinced it will get me out of any doghouse that my mouth builds with my wife, because they were absolutely stellar. So congrats on having that wonderful recipe. Have a few updates from staff. Next Tuesday, we'll begin the first day of our new planner, Michael Birchland. Like myself, this was not in cahoots. He's a Floridian refugee coming up here, experiencing this autumn for probably the very first time in his life, like I am. And you guys have a good one up here. It has been absolutely beautiful. In addition, we're having our next meeting's on November 12th. We currently have 2 public hearings scheduled. One is for a new IUP for a cannabis retail store. The other is for a zoning ordinance for one of our citizens. And in addition, yesterday we found out that we will be one of our current commissioners on this board will be unable to support going forward. So we'll be out working with you and to find a suitable person that's willing to serve the people of this city in this capacity for next term. And that's it.
Probably, but Andy?
I have nothing.
Susan?
Nothing?
Dan?
Yep.
Jesse?
One question. Have we ever explored like a hospitality tax at all?
Yes.
Just before the COVID pandemic, the city and the chamber explored a lodging tax. We did find, at least because we do have a limited number of lodging facilities in Forest Lake, that to be beneficial, it would have to be a larger kind of cooperative with adjacent jurisdictions. Also, the council then at the time wanted to make sure that there was support from the local lodging institutions, and it sounds like at least at that time, one of them may not have been favorable, but had later become favorable, but it was in the middle of a pandemic, and so it kind of dropped off. The council has looked at, or has asked us to look at that. It is kind of in the back of the EDA, in the back of the chamber's mind, like we need to do that, but it's just, at the moment, it has not been on any sort of like a strategic plan, work plan for anybody.
Was like, there's a lot of rentals in town that are not licensed,
We don't,
type places.
yeah, we don't have a licensing program, any rental registration, licensing for short or long-term in the
Could we do
community.
that as a revenue stream possibly in the future?
There is the potential to license and register, and then if a lodging tax went into place on rentals. However, the state lodging tax regulations do limit the amount of money in those that can be used by the municipality. You have to create a kind of like a convention and visitor bureau, but it's not really, I don't think it has to be a CVB that does then community marketing with the funds. So it's not necessarily, well, it could generate a lot of revenue. It's not going to generate as much for the city because only a nominal portion of it can be kept for administrative costs.
No, that was it.
Okay. I have nothing, so with that, Chair is looking for a motion to adjourn.
So move.
I have a motion, I have a motion and a second, it's non-debatable motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much for all of your efforts.